Thanks for coming today. As our caucus moves toward the 104th General Assembly, we are looking to address where we stand as a state and why we urgently need to course correct our current path. This election cycle was a clear mandate against one-party control. The residents of the state voted with their pocketbooks in mind, signaling a resounding call for a better fiscal accountability and immediate relief. It's a wake-up call, demanding a departure from Democrat-led policies that have driven us to where we stand today, facing a fiscal cliff. Illinois families are feeling the pain. They're tired of watching our hard-earned tax dollars vanish into the black hole of unchecked spending. The results at the polls spoke volumes. More groups are opening their eyes to our message of economic stability and responsibility. House Republicans will continue to advocate for Illinoisan families that desperately deserve and need change. What we can't afford is more gaslighting from Democrat leaders who got us into this mess. Just last week, Governor Pritzker, who is being led by other Democrat governors with talking points, claiming that the government doesn't control the economy. That's just another excuse to cover for his administration's failure to address our ballooning deficit and crumbling financial forecast. But let's be clear, Democrats are doubling down, panicking for what they perceive as threats from Washington. Instead of focusing on common sense solutions for Illinois, they're more concerned with enacting policies to counter what they think Trump might undo. This isn't leadership. It's petty politics at its worst. Voters across Illinois sent a message last Tuesday. They've had enough, and they do not want more self-serving politicians pretending to care about Illinois families while pushing their progressive agenda. For the first time in 2 generations, the margin between the two parties was narrow. Proof that Illinoisans are fed up. They're demanding a new path forward where we work together as a state to solve real problems. If the Democrat majority is truly ready to find common ground, the House Republicans are here, willing to listen and act. But if they persist with more tax hikes, radical agendas, and empty rhetoric, we will oppose and expose them, ensuring that the voices of Illinois families are heard. Now I'd like to introduce Deputy Leader Noreen Hammond.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Last week, Governor Pritzker tried to dismiss financial warnings and paint a rosy picture of his so-called balanced budgets. We face a much different reality. The Democrats' FY25 budget was precariously balanced through accounting gimmicks and one-time revenues, and a nearly $1 billion in tax increases. It barely had enough votes to get through their own Democratic supermajority legislature. As the minority party, we'll continue to hold our Democrat counterparts accountable for responsible spending, protecting our shared priorities, and we will vehemently oppose any attempt at tax hikes. Enough is enough. Last week, the Governor's Office of Management and Budget released the forecast for FY26, and according to GOMB, the state will face a $3.2 billion deficit. $3.2 billion. On the revenue side, corporate income taxes and sales taxes have underperformed, and GOMB is revising those revenue estimates downward by $354 million. It's a very ominous sign for Illinois' flagging economy. A reduction in sales tax revenue is a clear indication that Illinois' working families are suffering and they cannot afford another tax increase. In addition to the dismal revenue forecast, Illinois is facing a significant budget pressure going forward, and many of them, Expenditures are expected to increase by $3.2 billion in FY26, largely driven by additional funding needed for the evidence-based K through 12. Major liability increases in our group health and our Medicaid due to recent policy changes, mostly enacted by the majority party. Major drivers of the FY26 spending growth are $444 million for K through 12 education, $78 million for higher education, $91 million for public safety, $574 million for human services, $1.1 billion for Medicaid, $550 million for group health insurance as a result of the recent expansions for weight loss drugs, fertility treatments, step therapy, and medical inflation. On top of all of these budget pressures, there is a $730 million fiscal cliff facing Chicago's mass transit, as well as the mayor's demand for $1 billion additional for education spending in the city of Chicago. Given all of the fiscal pressures, we are once again calling on our Democratic leaders to work with us in good faith to negotiate and pass a fiscally responsible, truly balanced budget next year. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Leader Ryan Spain.
Well, thank you, Leader Hammond. We've just heard about the serious financial challenges facing the state of Illinois. It's a good moment to maybe take one step back and think about what's happening around us in the world of politics and the world of government. Right now in Washington, D.C., Presidents Biden and Trump are meeting, determining how they can work together in a successful presidential transition. We have a new majority leader elected for the United States Senate. And all of these individuals are coming together to think about how they can tackle the important issues that voters enunciated last week during the election. How can we reduce inflation and improve and increase wages for working people? How can we fix our broken immigration system? How can we reduce high utility prices and electric bills that make it difficult on our families? What can we do to facilitate economic growth? And these are things that need to be tackled together and in a unifying way. But what lessons have the Democrats learned from the election last week? Well, based on the comments from Governor Pritzker last week, clearly the wrong lessons have been learned. Remember, this is the same governor that came to the House floor, pointed at Republicans and called them all carnival barkers and doom grifters. And now here he is, offering some sort of gubernatorial macho man moment, saying that Donald Trump needs to come through him in order to deliver help to the people of the state of Illinois. Governor, let me be clear, that's the wrong message. That's not the lesson that we should be taking from the results of the election last week. We need to be thinking about how we can work together and improve the state of Illinois and build on economic growth that should be coming forward for our nation. We've got to work on solving these problems. Our immigration policies in the state of Illinois have been a mess. They've led to out-of-control spending that have placed priorities in the wrong place in terms of healthcare spending and asylum assistance. We need to fix that, and it's something that the federal government will be working on very intently. We need to resolve and reduce our high energy prices in the state of Illinois that have been delivered through green climate initiatives that the governor has focused on, but they've had a consequence of driving up utility bills all throughout the state of Illinois. We need to be preparing ourselves for the expiration and the redrafting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Remember, in 2017, tax reform was passed by Congress. It expires next year. In Illinois, we have spent that time decoupling ourselves from the federal tax code in order to create additional revenue gimmicks, as Leader McCombie talked about, to pad the state budget. We need to recouple with the federal tax code so that any of the changes that are made to facilitate economic growth can actually benefit us here in the state of Illinois, whether that's changing our estate tax, our depreciation laws, the way we do and offer operating loss carry forwards. We've made deliberate decisions in the state of Illinois to move away from those policies at the federal level. It's time to rejoin so that we can benefit from economic growth that needs to take place. And if I were Governor Pritzker, I would be reaching out to President Trump saying, how can we work to restore our SALT deductions for the state of Illinois that could provide property tax assistance, which is repeatedly one of the main issues that we hear about again and again from our constituents. And we also need to be preparing ourselves from the likely adjustments for not taxing tips and overtime wages. These are the things that we should be working together on now to prepare ourselves for new realities in Washington, D.C. It's time to put away the bluster, stop the macho man routine, and figure out how we can actually work together. Speaking of macho man, one more thing I'll just say. We have heard from the last several years and watched as a systematic disenfranchisement of Republican districts has taken place in the Illinois General Assembly. Taxpayer projects are being bestowed only to gerrymandered Democratic districts, and important infrastructure needs and other priorities are not being met because Democrats work to deliver the worst gerrymandering in the country. That's wrong. That's got to stop. We will stand united as a caucus to oppose those efforts, and likewise, we'll oppose any efforts to further disenfranchise our constituents with withholding funding from our district office allocations, our research and appropriation staffs, the good people that have to do the hard work of responding to the Democratic initiatives that are dropped in the middle of the night with thousands of pages without advance notice and collaboration. These dollars are very important, and the preservation of parity in those funds is critical to making sure that all people are represented equal in the state of Illinois. Let's learn the lessons from the election and figure out how we can work together in a fair way.